In the last video, I talked about how we would graph this drawing in the y-axis last, but what if the y-axis is already there and you don't want to draw it in last? So let's look at doing this again and how we could think about it differently so that we have our y-axis there. So all of this stuff still remains true. Now we've thought about shifting our sine graph to the right by pi over 4, and our period is 2 pi. So by shifting to the right pi over 4, that tells me that when x is pi over 4, that's going to be where the center of my sine graph is. And so I'm going to have the center of the sine graph be my d value. I've shifted up 3. Okay, so now I want to think about going into negative values so that I can figure out where my y-axis is going to be and what my graph is going to look like. So if I think about negative pi over 4, well, the distance between pi over 4 and negative pi over 4, so that distance between those x values is pi over 2. My whole period is 2 pi, so pi over 2 is 1/4 of the period. If I've gone 1/4 of the period, if I think about just my normal sine graph, it goes up, down, up. So here's half the period. 1/4 of the period puts me at my maximum. If I've gone the opposite direction, I've gone this way, I'm going to be down at my minimum. So I'm going to have, my minimum is going to be from 3, I go down 2, so that's going to be at 1. So if I plot points symmetrically around the around the y-axis, let's call this first one pi over 4, and we're going to be up at the center point, which is 3. So let's put in our principal axis, maximum, and minimum. Jeez, not straight. Maximum, minimum. So we know we had center because we're doing sine graph, and then down at the minimum. All right, well, I know that if I keep counting symmetrically, I'm going to go minimum, center, maximum, center, minimum, back to center. I know that distance, this full distance must be 2 pi, so this distance must be 2 pi. This was my pi over 4. This must be 9 pi over 4 to complete a full cycle. This one over here we said was negative pi over 4, and clearly we're counting by pi over 4s as we label and move around our graph. So again, we should complete a full cycle after a distance of 2 pi. So, sorry, that is in the wrong place. All right, so here's another full cycle. And if I go from pi over 4, this is negative 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Negative 7 pi over 4. And this distance again is a distance of 2 pi. So this time we drew the graph by leaving our our y-axis where it was, and we've still managed to draw the same graph.